Hi, Jordan. Good to
How
see you.
good? Good to see you too.
Thank you so much for joining us for a Nuala Insta Live today. I am Sarah, Nuala's clinical director. I'm a highly specialist speech therapist in the UK myself. And I'm really, really excited to be speaking to you today, Jordan. So do you want to tell everybody on the Insta who you are, what you do? Because there's so much.
Yeah, I always laugh when I'm like, depending on the day.
Yeah,
Uh,
different hats for which day?
yeah, mom, wife, sister, all of these different things. I'm Jordan Saunders. I am based in the US, located in Arlington, Virginia. I am the CEO and founder of the Resource Key. And my background, I had, 10 years of direct therapy doing speech therapy. And I'm excited to have this conversation. And I'll share a little bit more about the work that I'm doing later on, but that's a good brief overview.
That is a very good brief overview. And what we're discussing today, we really wanted to delve into what disability inclusion looks like in the US versus the UK. And also, I'm coming at it from a personal perspective. My brother has Down syndrome, and he's an adult now in his early 30s. So this conversation is a personal as well as a professional one for me today, which I'm quite excited to hear about what's happening in the US. And then we can have a discussion about what newly qualified therapists coming up through the field and currently practicing clinicians in the US and UK can think about more after they maybe a takeaway that they can start implementing in their practice, be it the setup of their clinic rooms, maybe how they lay out their website, the actual clinical therapy to start making a difference from today.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Brilliant. So in the US at the minute, what are you finding are the biggest challenges for inclusion in the workplace and in communities?
I definitely think if we look at the models, so medical model versus social model would be a great way to summarize some of the difficulties when we're talking about inclusion and as it relates to disability. So medical model is more people are disabled by their impairment differences. So it's more of, okay, we should be fixing their disability or changing their disability. The social model looks at more disability is caused by the way society is organized. So it's really looking at how can we meet people where they are and provide based on the needs versus so much, oh, we need to fix their disability or we need to change something. Really, if you look at really pushing disability inclusion, we're more looking at the social model, right? Because that's meeting people where they are and building environments that are inclusive and accessible that not only help people with disabilities, but really help for everyone. So that would be the best way to describe what I'm seeing. It's still more the medical model here in the US. We're not there yet. There's definitely, we made strides, and I feel like every stride is going in the right direction. But I think there's still a challenge, especially I can speak from experience in terms of as a speech language pathologist working in different settings. It was more of the medical model, right? Because you have these goals and you have certain diagnoses and you're trying to, really get a person to a certain point. So not always I can say, was I looking, okay, how can I meet the person where they are and build on that, or finding, not just using one program and trying to force it for every single client just because, okay, this is what the every research says that this should be used for every this type of diagnosis. I feel like it was later on in my career where I really learned, like, hey, let me sit back, observe every aspect of whether it's in this setting or asking their parent or asking the child. I think, if it's a child or even adult, how do you learn best? Or maybe there was different patterns or ways that you saw, hey, like if I put these things in this order, this person is doing really well and I'm supporting where they are, and then we build from there. Or this worked really well and they seem to really like this. Let's take this and build on it. So I think, you know, it's still challenging in the sense there's still the medical model in a lot of different settings, and it outweighs the social model, which is where true disability inclusion, I think, lies in the social model.
And I think in terms of a clinician practicing, what you're describing in terms of medical models is very true in a clinic setting. But I think over here, especially in the UK, that social model, you see it more in specialist provisions. So if you're a clinician going in to a specialist provision for maybe autism or for learning disabilities, they're already creating that environment going, right, so how does this child learn? How are they communicating, and how can we make that setting more inclusive for them? So a therapist coming into that, it delivers their therapeutic approach in a slightly different way than it would in one-to-one in the clinic.
I agree. I could see that totally. I think it's too the time. I don't know how caseloads are there, but when I worked in the school district, I think at one district I worked in, and there was 80 students on my caseload. So
wow,
it's hard to be able to customize and meeting each student where they are if you have groups of 7 or 8, maybe small groups in a, you know, in a setting, versus if like going home health, right? If you're going to, you can probably do more of the personalization and meeting people where they are. So I do find that's a difficulty in some areas as well.
Yeah. And home setting is useful for that functional approach, isn't it? Showing parents what they can do every day with the items they have, that it's not some specialist equipment that you need.
Yes.
Hey? That's a big one, isn't it? I think that covers both sides of the Atlantic.
I agree. Yeah, that's the thing, because a lot of the great programs sometimes that are used in a lot of different settings, some of them don't go home or, you know, with the client. So it's just like, all right, this was great for the 30 minutes or the 6 hours of the person's day. But then when they go home, they don't have access to some of these different things.
Yeah, and I think we see that a lot over here in terms of AAC. So a child may have a pod book or a PECS book or Prolo Pro to go on an iPad in school, but then that's not being translated to home. So there's education that needs to be done, that actually parents need to be trained as well, and it needs to be across all settings. My favourite phrase, Jordan, is to say, well, a child's voice doesn't switch off at 4 o'clock, does it? So why would you stop the AC device going home? What do you think?
I love that.
Oh, thank you. That means so much coming from you. I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to say it. I was like, oh, I'm going to go for it. It's Friday. See what you think.
Why not? I love that. It's true. And you can maybe expand too on especially AAC is a great example, because I think with AAC, so many times people think of it as like, okay, the person and then the AAC device, right? It's interconnected though, right? It's like you said, this is their way, someone's way of communicating, right? So it can't just be, all right, keep it in their backpack or keep it in their briefcase for certain settings and then pull it out at lunchtime or pull it out, you know, when we're doing a structured activity. It has to be utilized in conversation, right? It's not just like, okay, press your, you know, hello button. It's like, hi, how are you doing? You know, having a conversation that is flowing. So what about your experience in terms of with AAC? And just, I don't know, I'm curious to hear.
So I'm actually involved in quite a lot of legal work in the UK. So I do expert witness work. So I get called in to do an assessment for a child if the speech therapy provision isn't being met, and to see what the education setting's like. And I can't tell you how many times I go in and it's in a drawer. I mean, it's a stereotypical comment, but it's really true. And it's always used at snack time and then put away. As if snack time is the only time to do it. So I'm really key. And there does seem always to be a disconnect between the home and the school setting, with parents dying to know what it is and to be trained in it, but then there's that disconnect. So that needs to be joined up more, and that's what I advocate for, that the therapy needs to take place in all settings, everyone needs to be trained, and the device literally needs to metaphorically be around the child's neck, because it's their voice. Yeah, it should be with them at all times or with their one-to-one, which is so important. But yeah, AAC is a big part of being inclusive, isn't it? And giving that person literally their voice in their setting. The other thing I wanted to talk to you today about, because I was looking into it, was looking maybe at the other side of the spectrum, as it were, with really kind of high-functioning, autistic, verbal young people that may have difficulties with language. And we were discussing earlier about in the youth justice system over in the UK, the highest percentage of people in the criminal justice system who have speech, language and communication needs because they're not understanding language. And a good example I have of that was a young man I worked with who sadly was going through a court case hearing because he'd been interviewed by police, didn't understand before and after, didn't understand WH questions. Why did you do it? Where did you do it? What happened? So while he was being interviewed, got very frustrated, got quite angry because he couldn't communicate or understand the language that was being given to them. Doing a speech and language therapy assessment on him revealed that he couldn't understand the concepts before and after. He could only understand very basic, concrete questions of what happened, who was there. So there was, again, very big disconnect between what they were asking and the information he was able to give. Is that something you find as well over in the US?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring this up because I recently was doing some research and delving into more articles surrounding the criminal justice system, and there's studies. I can't remember the exact statistics, but there's definitely a good amount, especially when you look in the criminal justice system. There's a lot of more related to like cognition and like having difficulties. A lot of maybe didn't understand direction, even finding too with when people are pulled over and if someone's deaf or maybe even hard of hearing, how are you able to communicate? And especially that increases, let's say a Black man that's deaf is pulled over, right? And so that increases even more, right, in terms of just all of the things going on in the world. And then you have where you're not able to communicate, and maybe there's not the training on within the police department about, okay, how do you communicate to this person, or how do you, and maybe they don't even understand that what it means to not be able to understand, maybe for like comprehension or being deaf. How do you provide these different accommodations and be able to truly allow this person to have their rights, right? Because at the end of the day, that's what it kind of comes down to. And there's many, when you look at the numbers, and they're doing more studies where they have some type of, someone has some type of disability within the system. And it's unfortunate because, like you said, it could have been down to they may not even understand what you're saying, or maybe they're admitting to something because they're scared, or just agreeing, because maybe they don't understand what the person's asking. So yeah, I don't know the specific numbers, but there definitely are more studies and research coming out around that.
Yeah, well, it's definitely another hat to add, training up the police force into understanding more. And I know the medical profession, I don't know what it's like in the US, they're coming around to it in the UK a bit more. They're understanding they might need to give visuals to someone coming into hospital. They're understanding they might need to give medical information in a pictorial way, which is great. Does that happen in the US?
And providing pictures, you said?
Yeah, just breaking down like medical information so that someone can understand.
I've seen that some in hospitals, especially I saw a few different resources, especially with COVID, and then providing different supports to be able for someone to understand, especially because some people were in hospitals and they were relying on, you couldn't have someone in there with you. So how are you communicating if maybe your spouse is the person that is usually your advocate or is able to get the message out quicker, especially in emergency situations? So I did see a few hospitals where they were implementing pictures and picture communication to be able to allow the person to communicate, hey, like what's going on on a scale of 1 to 10, or these are the different steps that I need for you to take to be able to get something done. So yeah.
So I think we can both agree then between UK and US it's happening, but slowly, slowly.
It's definitely slowly, but I think slow sometimes. As long as, for me, I always think, okay, as long as we're pushing in a direction where we're taking this and making different changes and going for it, it's better than just not doing anything. Yeah. What is it like in terms of when, for you and your personal experience, do you think you all are more like social model or medical, or it's a mix of both depending on where?
I would say leaning towards the social model more, especially universities over here where I studied as well. We were taught about both models, but very much encouraged that the new approach now was the social model. And I think you can even see that in the way speech and language therapists write reports now. My mother showed me some of my brothers back from the, early 90s, and they're horrific. If you read them, they're so negative because it's medical. You know, they're talking about everything in very medical terms. It's quite shocking. If you wrote that now, you know, you'd probably struck off because it's just so not one positive. Whereas now we're very much taught, you know, even if you are working with a child and there are lots of needs, you always put in the strengths. Yeah, there's always a strength you can put in to balance it out. And I think that's very important as well, because at the end of the day, we are clinically trained. We're looking at a child in a clinical way, but we're also presenting this information to a parent, to a carer, to mum and dad, who may not be a clinician, they're just mum and dad. And as much as they know their child has needs, which is why they come to see us, it's also nice to recognise the strengths that their child has as well. So I would say, especially where I work, it's definitely leaning towards a social model, which is positive.
Yeah, that's so good. I love what you said, especially with the, just, you can find something like, you know, there are so many strengths and there are so many ways that someone learns best, right? And really highlighting on those things when you're in the meetings with parents, or how you know, when parents are receiving the diagnosis of, you know, when I work with early intervention, like there's a way of going about, you know, sharing these information. And I think that sometimes is overlooked as that's just as important, right? As the therapy that you're providing, right? How you're delivering these things, how you're writing, and just really trying to sit back and think, if you were in the other person's shoes, and if you were, you know, how would you, or this student that you're working with, right? There's a way of interacting. And I always would stress when I would work with whoever and whoever I was working with, is that no matter if someone is verbally speaking or they're not verbally, everyone is nonverbal, everyone is communicating in a certain way. And acknowledge, like small things like acknowledging when you come in the room, not ignoring, right? Or having your back, or talking about a child or someone in the room, right? Still, I think there's those levels where, like, yes, someone may not be nonverbal, but that doesn't mean that they're not understanding or taking in what you're saying. And that doesn't mean, even if they are taking in what you're saying or not, there's still a level of respect and acknowledgement, and treating each person as a human being. And I think, you know, I think that's so important. And I'm glad you brought that up, because it's true. There's strengths in every single person, and there's ways of going about sharing information too.
Absolutely. Jordan, I think that's a perfect takeaway for any clinician on the call today. I think you've summed it up beautifully. It's about respect and treating the person with respect and communicating with them in the room, which I think is so important. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been absolutely wonderful to talk to you. On our Nawala website as well, because I'm involved with developing clinical resources, we've created quite a lot around AAC and around communicating voice and stuff, which is really useful for clients on Nawala, which would be really great, I think, for kind of pushing forward that inclusivity.
Yes, I think it's so important. I love that you all provide those resources and all in one place. It's so easy to have that.
Yeah, it's great. I always describe it as, you know, you were a speech pathologist for many, many years, and so I've been for many years. It's like having the boot of your car on a digital platform. Does that sum it up? Instead of having all those resources in one place, it's just on one platform. It's brilliant, isn't it?
It really is. It's like everything is okay. I can just click AAC and I get everything popped up. It's, yeah, it makes it so much easier. It's one less thing you have to worry about.
Brilliant. Jordan, thank you so much for your time today. I'm sure we will pick up again in the future because this topic is so wide. I could talk to you all night about it.
Same.
There is a time difference. But listen, thank you so much. It was great to talk to you. A great way to end the month of March. And as it's World Down Syndrome Day as well this week as well. So it's been brilliant to talk to you today with this. And have a lovely weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Same to you. Take care. Bye.